I'm Nintendo.
And I'm Sega. This is Console Wars!
Does your character have grayscale?
Nope. Okay. Does your character have a scar?
Yeah.
Is your character Tyrion Lannister?
You got it.
Nice! Another victory in Game of Thrones Guess Who? Come in.
Hey, Amazon here. Where do you want this package?
Oh, nice. Must be my fresh papaya. Whoa! A talking frog!
A frog? Where?
I'm talking about you.
Frog? I'm not a frog.
Okay. I think maybe we had too much to drink.
No, you're not drunk, you dope. I'm not a frog because I am a toad.
Oh.
Well, what's the difference?
What's the difference? Well, for one, I am not covered in a fine mucus. You ever meet Kermit the Frog? Slimy.
But still, that's better than warts.
Yeah, you guys give people warts.
What? That's a myth.
Oh yeah? Then how do you explain all these warts I got?
That's because you're dirty. Try taking a bath once in a while. I can smell you from here.
Well, I think it's time to eat some papaya and play some video games.
You guys like video games? Not to brag or nothing, but I was in a few video games back in the day.
Really? Which ones?
Look at me! Isn't it obvious?
Yeah, I thought you looked familiar. He was in that big franchise. Frogger!
You gotta be kidding me! I'm not a frog, I'm a toad, remember?
Right, he did mention that.
Toad. I know. Video game with Toad. You were in Super Mario.
That wasn't a toad, that was a mushroom named Toad.
Right. Because of that whole mushroom head.
Think fighting game. Big muscles, green, 2 players.
Ninja Turtles?
Silly Toad, the Ninja Turtles aren't toads.
How dumb are you guys? Battletoads! The Battletoads game is a game I was in. I'm Rash.
Oh, okay.
That game.
What? What's wrong with Battletoads? That game was fantastic.
Those games are so hard.
Yeah, they're impossible to beat.
I'll tell you what. If I help you beat Battletoads, then you gotta give me some beer. If not, I'll give you some free Amazon gift cards. Huh?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Alright, let's play some Battletoads.
Wait, what are you doing?
Well, I was gonna put in the Sega Genesis version, because it's an excellent port of the original.
Why would you want to play that? You could play the much better remake for the Super Nintendo.
No thanks. The Genesis game is much better.
No, the Super Nintendo game is.
That's it! Are we doing this?
I don't know, it's Saturday. I might have a hot date off today. Yeah, we're doing this! Battletoads and Battlemaniacs for Super Nintendo.
Versus Battletoads for Sega Genesis.
Battletoads is a beat-em-up platform video game developed by Rare and published by Trade West. It was originally released in 1991 for the NES. It was later ported to many consoles. The Genesis version was ported in 1993 by Arc System Works.
Battletoads and Battlemaniacs was also developed by Rare and published by Trade West. Released in 1993, it was developed as sort of a remake of the original Battletoads. It even received a release on the Sega Master System in 1994, but only in Brazil.
So which game's better, the port or the remake? Let's find out.
The Genesis game looks great.
Like I said before, this is a port of the NES game, but with upgrades. It has higher definition and more colorful graphics. This can be seen during gameplay and in the cutscenes. And it still maintains the excellent frame rate of the original.
That's a good comparison. But aren't you supposed to be comparing it to the Super Nintendo game?
There's no harm in telling you improvements over the original.
Yeah, I guess I would avoid a Super Nintendo comparison too. Especially since my game looks so much better.
Now this is a good looking game. Look how big these characters are. Look how detailed everything is. These massive sprites. These colorful levels. This is how a 16-bit Battletoads game should look.
It definitely looks much better than a Sega game.
The Sega game looks poor compared to the Super Nintendo game. Everything on Sega looks so tiny. And compared to the Super Nintendo, it really does look like an 8-bit game. Couldn't they have upgraded the graphics a little more? It came out 2 years after the original. They had plenty of time. Just look how the environment changes on this Super Nintendo level. You won't see that on Sega. Everything looks better on the Super Nintendo. This looks the way a 16-bit game should. Not this game. And even the cutscenes look better.
Hey, the Dark Queen looks pretty good on Sega Genesis.
We need to focus. Let's look at the Battletoads themselves.
On Super Nintendo, not only are they nicely detailed, they look different from one another. One is big and the other is small. On Sega, they look the same. They're just different colors. And when you're idle on Super Nintendo, the Battletoads have different animations. On Sega, they just blink.
Battletoads wouldn't just stand there blinking. Am I right, Rash? Rash?
Oh, sorry. Sometimes I just stand around and blink. It's my thing that I do.
Okay, let's talk about character animation.
The main characters on Super Nintendo have more animations. Their limbs turn into elaborate weapons and items to decimate enemies. They also have different animations when they attack. And on Sega, the attacks for both characters look exactly the same.
This is an easy call for graphics.
Since the Sega game only slightly improved the look of the original, and the Super Nintendo gave it a 16-bit overhaul, with bigger sprites, more details, more animations, and an overall better look. Best graphics go to Super Nintendo.
The presentation in both games, pretty similar.
Both games have similar cutscenes between levels. You see the Dark Queen say something, followed by T-Bird giving you instructions for the next level. It's pretty similar.
Yeah, that's pretty similar, but I have some more things.
Included in my cutscenes is a map of the levels. This is only in the Sega game, not Super Nintendo.
You want to talk about missing things? Let's talk about your game.
Both games have endings, but the Super Nintendo has more. The Sega game just has more Dark Queen and T-Bird again. Super Nintendo has more cutscenes in the ending. And if that's not enough, the Super Nintendo game also has an opening cinematic. The Sega game doesn't. Even the NES game has an opener.
I thought we weren't comparing the Nintendo game.
Not when it helps me. Plus, my HUD's better too.
Both games have similar HUDs. You see the life bar, the number of lives, and score. But the Super Nintendo also has a character's name and a picture. Sega doesn't. And Sega has hearts for number of lives, which is nice. But if you get more than 5 lives, you'd never know since it maxes out at 5 hearts. So you could have 5 lives left, or 50. On Super Nintendo, you see a number for lives, and it goes way beyond 5.
Yeah, but my HUD looks more like the original game.
Would you stop bringing up the Nintendo game?
But you
Just one presentation. I know.
With more cutscenes and a more detailed HUD, best presentation goes to Super Nintendo.
The music in my game is good. Those NES songs sound... What? I have to. The songs sound pretty good on Sega.
No way, my tunes are much better.
Those songs aren't as memorable as mine.
Yours? You mean the ones you copied off the NES?
We both copied songs off the NES. and I think mine sounds better.
Sega's music is faster and more intense. The music just sounds better on Sega.
I just think the music in the Sega Genesis game is better overall.
But your game is missing one song.
When you pause on the Sega, you don't hear anything. But on Super Nintendo, you get a sweet track.
Those are just drums. There's nothing special there.
Well, I thought you'd like that since the NES does the same thing.
Stop using my thing against me.
Well, let's not forget about the sound effects. Mine definitely sound better.
Listen to the punching on Super Nintendo. Now listen to Sega. It's pretty weak.
Granted, I don't have the best sound effects, but the music in Sega is too good.
With an excellent updated soundtrack that loses intensity on Super Nintendo, best sound goes to Sega Genesis.
The gameplay in both games is very similar.
Now that I can agree with.
Both games start out by looking like a typical beat 'em up, with one button to jump and one to attack. Then from the second level, things take a turn. Both games have a descending K level, the infamous speeder bikes level, the snake riding level, a jet tractor level, and a rat race in a tower.
And both games are incredibly difficult. There's no hand-holding in either games. They both uphold the Battletoads' reputation for being very hard. And both games can be played in 1 or 2 players.
But that's where the similarities end. My game offers a lot more than yours.
Let's talk about the Battletoads. On Sega, they play exactly the same. It doesn't matter if you're player 1 or 2. The moves and attacks are identical. But on Super Nintendo, it's different. Each Battletoad has different types of attacks. One punches, while the other mainly kicks. And one is slow and powerful, and the other is faster, but not as strong. Plus, on Super Nintendo, on one player, you can play as either Toad. You just gotta change the controller ports. Can't do that on Sega. One player is only Rash. Guess it doesn't matter since they play the same anyways. Also, Super Nintendo has a 2-player option where you don't hit each other. Sega only has the 2-player mode where you hit one another. I hate that mode.
Yeah, let's talk about those fighting controls again.
Beat 'em ups on Super Nintendo, the typical controls are B is jump and Y is attack. But in this game for some reason, the controls are reversed, and you can't change them.
It's not so bad. A is also jump, so using B to attack and A to jump, it works fine.
It's still a bit of a learning curve.
And my game has some things that yours doesn't.
In the Genesis game, you can get life by eating flies. Nothing gives you life in the Super Nintendo. And in Genesis, sometimes Space Invaders take away life directly from your life bar. How cool is that?
Okay, the flies I get. But UFOs? Come on, what do they want with toads?
Hey! They took my wallet! This always happens!
Okay, didn't think that was gonna happen. Well, my game has something yours doesn't.
The Super Nintendo has bonus stages. A nice fun way to take a break and get some much needed 1-ups. No bonus stages in the Sega game.
You want to talk about missing levels? Let's talk about your game.
Since the Genesis version is a direct port, it has all 12 levels of the NES game. The Super Nintendo game, on the other hand, not including bonus levels, only has 6. 6! You're missing half the game. You're missing the ice level, a surf level, a water level, a rocket level, and 2 tower ascents. There's lots of gameplay variety in these levels too. The Super Nintendo only gives you half the Battletoads experience. Why settle for half when you can get the whole thing?
But my game's not a port, so it's not really missing those levels. Mine's original.
I wouldn't call it completely original.
I know the Super Nintendo game isn't a direct port, but all the Super Nintendo levels are based on Nintendo levels. It certainly didn't do much to make itself different when it comes to gameplay. It's essentially the same game as the NES. Well, half the game at least.
But it does make some changes.
Ragnarok's canyon is a lot longer and has more obstacles. In the cave dive level, the ropes have been replaced by a cool hoverboard. In the speeder bike level, there are jumps in the pit now. In the jet tractor level, you have areas you need to jump and duck. All of these were nice additions to the Super Nintendo game, so it's not just a copy.
And my game does have better controls.
Take the snake level for example. Staying on a snake is harder than it looks on Sega. If you're too close to the head or tail, you can fall off. This happens often since you need to stay on it till the last second. On Super Nintendo, it's much more forgiving. You never fall through the snake. Much more reliable. And the Genesis D-pad is super sensitive. Say you try to inch forward by tapping forward. Most times, it'll think you want to dash, and you'll run to your death.
But my game has more levels.
That doesn't always make it a better game.
These games are difficult. Too difficult. The amount of effort and memorization you have to put in to beat a level is ridiculous. It prevents a series from being a classic. Trust me, 6 levels of this game is enough. You won't feel like you're missing anything. And for the limited amount of lives and continues you have, 12 levels is way too much. Give me 6 levels any day. So even though the Super Nintendo game doesn't have as many levels, for having improved combat, tighter controls, bonus levels, and additions to the established levels, gameplay goes to Super Nintendo.
Even though both games are good, one is better, and that game is Battletoads and Battlemaniacs for the Super Nintendo.
It has better graphics with a 16-bit look as opposed to a slightly improved 8-bit look. It has better presentation with more cutscenes and a more detailed HUD. It doesn't have as many good songs as Sega, but there are still some good tunes here, and the sound effects are much better. And it doesn't have as many levels, but it still has better gameplay with improved combat, tighter controls, bonus levels, and other additions. The Sega Genesis version is a good game. It's an excellent port that improved on the NES game. But this is Super Nintendo versus Sega Genesis we're talking. 16 bits. And this looks and plays more like a 16-bit game. This doesn't. It's just an improved 8-bit experience, which limits the game. It plays and feels more like it's 8-bit. When you think 16-bit Battletoads, you want to see a game that looks and plays as good as other 16-bit games. Super Nintendo gives you that. Sega, not so much. Since the Genesis game is an almost identical clone, and the Super Nintendo gives you that 16-bit experience, best game goes to Super Nintendo.
But I had more levels.
Like I said, doesn't always make it better.
That was great, guys! Way to beat the games!
But we didn't beat the games.
Didn't you show the endings and the final boss?
We just got those off of YouTube.
Yeah, we gave up. Those games are impossible.
No way! They're beatable! I have an idea! How about we use this?
That's a Game Genie for the NES.
You wanna bet? Hold on to your butts!
I am Game Genie who summons me.
Whoa! A genie came out of the Game Genie!
Could you help us beat Battletoads?
I beat ghouls and ghosts with one arm tied behind my back. This will be easy. What? That was a cheap death. I will try again. How was I supposed to know that? No worries, I got this. Oh, come on. How is anybody not supposed to die there? What? I jumped. You saw. I pushed the button. It's not me, it's the game. Come on. You literally need to memorize the entire level. Who has time for that? Why would anyone make a game this hard? This isn't fun. This is stupid. This is impossible. How is a kid in 1993 supposed to do this? No, come on. Come on, do it. Come on. This is impossible. No one can do this. Screw this game. I quit.
I can't believe that controller knocked him out.
Huh. Well, that explains why the game's so hard. These Battletoads can't take a hit. He's not moving, guys.
Oh no, not again. Game Genie out.
So what do you want to do now?
I don't know. Want to play more Game of Thrones Guess Who?
Do I? Alright. Does he have sex with a relative?
Yes.
That's half the cast. That's not helpful at all.
Thanks for checking out our latest video. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And thanks to Xavier TheLycan for his donation of the 2 games. And thanks to everyone who suggested Battletoads. And keep those other suggestions coming. We will get to them. Also, check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for more Console Wars goodness. Later.